And the second principle is decide who are your customers. Knowing who your customers are is essential if you're going to solve their problem. It's critical if you seek to make a difference in their lives. The mistake that so many hardworking entrepreneurs make is they define their customers as anyone who buys their product. Well, yes, that's a definition of a customer. But what is the difference between the people who buy your product and the people who don't? Is it simply a gulf between the people who know about it and the people who don't? I don't think so. Because there is no product in the world that is bought by everyone. The best products, the brands we care about, the organizations that thrive, are for someone, not for everyone. Where we get hung up then, once we decide to choose our customer, is in thinking that we have to base it on what they look like, on what it says on their census form, on what it says in their bank account. No, no, and no. We choose our customer based on what they believe and what they want. This is psychographics, not demographics. So, some examples. In the early 1980s, I launched at Spinnaker Software a line of computer games based on science fiction novels. Ray Bradbury, Arthur C. Clarke, real classics in their field. Who was my customer? Well, my decision as the brand manager was my customer was the kind of person that goes to science fiction conventions. Now, once I say out loud, the kind of person that goes to science fiction conventions, I've said a whole bunch. I've just told you something about what they want, what they believe, what their library looks like, how they might dress. Of course, it's all a stereotype. We're putting people into buckets so that we can serve them. And I decided that I was going to reach out to this group, spend time with this group, figure out if I was right about my assumption. So I took a booth at a trade show, I showed up at these science fiction conventions, and I discovered really quickly that I was totally wrong. Yes, it's true. The people at these science fiction conventions knew who Ray Bradbury was, wanted to meet Michael Crichton. They were science fiction fans. But they did not have an attitude that said, we would like to try something in a new medium. They did not say, I have a computer, it's 1984, what do I do with it? They weren't saying, I would rather spend hours playing a computer game than sitting at home and reading a book. They weren't shopping for something new. They were engaging with something comfortable. That is not a criticism of the people at the science fiction conventions. It's a criticism of me because I wasn't clear about who my customers were. And if I showed up and offered them a computer game, which I did, they would say, no, thank you, because it wasn't for them. It took a little while for me to realize that the people I was going to be selling to that first critical year, that year we ended up selling hundreds of thousands of copies, was someone who was asking, what's new? Who was walking into a computer store or Lechmere or Target and saying, what's new? Their psychographic was clear. They were people who were into computers, and they were people who were into novelty. That pizza place, the one on the corner that, does pretty well, that's a pizza place for folks who say, where can I get a pizza within 1 block of where I live? We know a lot about those customers just from that one sentence. We know where they live, and we know which problem pizza solves for them. A few blocks away is a place with a line out the door every night. A place that serves a pizza that in a double-blind taste test might taste a little bit better than the pizza at the other place. The pizza costs a lot more. People come from much further away. But if we do the math, it's clear that the percentage of people within driving distance, within walking distance, is lower because people are coming from further away, but fewer people from the building are coming. Because it is not the solution for, if you want close pizza, here it is. It is the solution for people who say, I want special pizza, pizza that makes me feel like I am the kind of person that waits in line for pizza. And if that pizza place expanded too much, it wouldn't work. because in the words of Yogi Berra, it's too popular. No one goes there anymore. If it expanded too much, the line would go down. Once the line went down, other sorts of people would come. People who maybe weren't there because it was special, they were there because it was famous. Serving people who are coming because you're famous is very different than serving people who are coming for a different reason. Find your customers, find your future. Everything you're going to do as an entrepreneur, based on the scale you've chosen and the customers you've chosen, is pretty clearly set. It's set because customers want what they want. And if they don't want what you've got, they're going to go somewhere else. So this is the problem with product first orientation. If you say something like, I'm going to have the largest selection of crescent wrenches, you have a problem because online someone has a larger collection than you. If you're going to say, I'm going to be the cheapest at selling this widget, you have a problem because unless you have some magic machine, someone else can make it cheaper. If you're going to say, this is for everyone, you're going to have a really hard time getting the word out because reaching everyone is time-consuming and expensive. But if you can be clear who it's for specifically, then you can begin to make your product better. Not for them, but for the smallest viable audience. And the smallest viable audience is the second half of find your customers. We are not seeking to reach everyone. We're trying to reach the group of people that is big enough to support us at the scale we seek to be. They go together. So the smallest viable audience for a jazz club might be 10,000 people. The end. We're done. It's enough. That keeps the Green Mill in Chicago doing just fine every Monday night. Because not all 10,000 people come. They only need 100. 1 out of 100 people who care about the place come every Monday night. 1 out of 100 of 10,000 is 100. It's enough. True fans, as Kevin Kelly calls them. How many true fans do you need? If you want to make it as a musician selling your work online, 1,000 might be enough. If there are 1,000 people on Patreon or some other service who are paying you $100 a year, you're doing fine. How do you become important to 1,000 people? Not by saying, I make music just like you can listen to on Spotify, because people can just listen to it on Spotify. That the challenge that we have as entrepreneurs is to have the guts to say it's not for you. I refuse to define my customers as the people who buy from me. Instead, I want to define my customers as people who believe in something, who want something, who have hopes and fears and dreams. And so our work is to dig deep and to say, this group of people, do I have enough empathy for them that I can make something for them? Now, it's important to understand you don't have to be one of the customers. You don't have to have survived cancer to be an oncologist. That understanding what your customers want and believe is essential, but it doesn't have to be what you want and believe. It just has to be work you are willing to do. And so what we have to do as entrepreneurs is define from the start our smallest viable audience and then apply practical empathy to them. They don't know what you know. They don't want what you want. They don't see what you see. And that's okay. It's okay because if it's not okay, you can't serve them. If it's not okay, you can't reach them because they won't come around until after you start talking to them in a way that they can hear. This is challenging because you've got the guts and the ego strength and the passion to start something. You want it to be your thing. But no, the customer wants to embrace it like it's their thing. Does this mean that you need to do focus groups and ask everyone what they want? No, because people are terrible at figuring out what they want before they have it. Nobody showed up at Phil Knight's house and said, please make us Nike sneakers. Nobody. It took him and Bill Bowerman to figure out what a certain kind of person wanted. So as long as we're talking about Nike, now let's talk about the fact that the customers you serve are going to evolve. At the beginning, Nike made shoes for a certain kind of college track star. The end. You couldn't buy a sweatshirt. You couldn't buy jogging shoes. You couldn't buy stuff to wear to the mall. Wasn't for you. They were very clear about who their customer was. Then they started making things for javelin throwers or catchers or whatever it is, and other athletes, and then cleats, and then runners, and then, sweatshirts to wear to the mall. Now, the person who's buying a Nike sweatshirt to wear to the mall doesn't have the same hopes and dreams and fears as a track runner. And so Nike has had to become many companies, a complicated organism, a company that launches more than one new product every single day, because Nike is working at a totally different scale than it was at the beginning. But they never would have gotten to where they got if they hadn't chosen from the start a group of people, very small, probably 10,000 in the whole world, who wanted their product once they figured out what their product was. They wanted it because it was a magical placebo that added some benefits as well. But it helped them believe. It helped them realize that they could run a little bit faster if they were willing to commit. Nike was able to tell a story to these athletes, a true story, a story that resonated, a story that they could share. But it was a very small group of people. And once you are clear with yourself and your team about who you seek to serve, now you have the ability to ignore everyone else. Because other people are going to tell you what they want or believe, and you don't care because it's not for them. And so if you own a small winery and someone criticizes you because your wine is too expensive, you should say, thank you. Here's the address of a big winery that sells cheaper wine. You should encourage people to go to your competitors because that's a sign that you have found your audience and that other people who want what you don't make, who need what you don't have, you should serve them by sending them somewhere else. And so a posture is available to us. It's a posture of generosity, of making an offer, of saying, if you're the kind of person that wants X, Y, and Z, if you're the kind of person that believes A, B, and C, that's what we have. And if you're not, sorry for taking your time. Here's a whole bunch of other people who are happy to help you. And then the last part comes from Michael Schrage, and it's this. Once you know who this group of people is, the question is, who do you want to help them become? Because every time an entrepreneur shows up, he or she changes something. We are here to make a change happen. What change are you seeking to make? It could be something as simple as saying someone who craves a certain kind of pizza, after they eat here, will be changed into someone who is done with that craving, at least for tonight, and now has a new craving that they'll have to come back for tomorrow. Or it could be something much more dramatic. So Apple evolved during its glory days because they decided that there was a certain group of people, technically friendly, graphically oriented, and Apple decided to help these people develop better taste in the way they did digital interaction and to help them show that better taste to other people.
Hello, I'm a Mac.
And I'm a PC. And I feel inadequate.
Okay.
PCs get viruses. We can't do as much out of the box.
I don't know why you're so hard on yourself. I don't get it.
Mac, why don't you say something positive about PC?
Okay, easy. PC, you are a wizard with numbers and you dress like a gentleman.
PC?
Well, Mac, I guess you are a little better at creative stuff.
Well, thank you.
Even though it's completely juvenile and a waste of time.
Maybe you should come in twice a week.
Apple changed an entire generation of computer users, which is why, during its early years, it had such a rabid following. Because, it was like a religion. It was a label. It was something you could get tattooed to your arm. Harley Davidson makes motorcycle riders who have been disrespected, who have felt like outcasts, feel like part of the family. They don't sell motorcycles. They sell that. Before Harley Davidson, you might feel alone. After you've got a Harley, you might feel together. The Grateful Dead, for 10 years, the #1 touring band in the United States, only had one hit record, and it sort of ruined the whole thing. Almost no one went to see the Grateful Dead live, but the people who did went all the time. The people who went knew it was for them, and they wanted to go to be with the other people. That a Grateful Dead concert wasn't about the music. You could get the music for free. They encouraged people to share the tapes. The Grateful Dead concert was about connecting the people they chose to serve, the smallest viable audience. You can become the Grateful Dead with 5 million rabid fans. That's all you need, 5 million, one of the greatest rock groups of all time. So between 10,000 people supporting a jazz club and 5 million people supporting a rock group, there's plenty of room. We are not seeking to serve everyone. We're seeking to serve someone. Have you figured out who it is? What they believe, what they hope, what they want, what they dream of? And have you figured out what they'll tell the others? So I hope you can see how the first two principles dance with each other. Your scale determines how big your minimum viable audience is. A big minimum viable audience requires you to have a group large enough that you can support them and they can support you. As the group gets larger, there are more people hustling for their attention. It is less likely that you will be the one and only. And so they dance back and forth and back and forth. The goal is to make things better by making better things. The opportunity is to find a hole and fill it. Big holes are harder to find than small holes. And as the market evolves, the nature of the holes will change as well. And so you show up, whether you're making computers or sneakers or you're building something online, for just a few people. A group of people who need a thing and know it. A group of people who are happy to talk about that thing to other people, which we'll explore in a little bit. And then, as it spreads to a larger group, you're solving a different problem for those people because they want something else, they believe something else, they need something else. And so the act of entrepreneurship is the act of making change happen. But once you make a change happen, that change isn't new anymore, and now you have to make a new change happen, solve a new problem for a different group of people. So as we make our choices about how to make our existing entity do better, or how to build an entity that has a system in place that will help it grow, that will help it be profitable, that will help it make a difference, we have to be crystal clear that we are not in the business of simply finding ourselves a job with no boss, that what we are actually doing is showing up with an asset, something that we can make, a problem we can solve for a specific group of people. So that's the hard homework. Can you describe them? Can you talk about them? Can you say it out loud? Are you willing to acknowledge that you have competitors who solve other people's problems better than you can, and vice versa? Because being really clear about that helps us get to the next steps. Thanks for listening. More to come.